Hi, I'm Charlie. I'm 26 years old, and this is the story of how I went from being a insecure, bullied kid who was submerged in trauma and student debt to an entrepreneur who's made nearly $30 million online. Just over 7 years ago, I was a broke teenager working 3 minimum wage jobs. Now I'm an 8-figure entrepreneur and I live in this villa in Dubai, but more to the point, I've proved to myself that it's actually possible. And I built the life that my younger self always wanted, but it's been extremely challenging, and today I'm going to share the unfiltered journey with you. This video is not to brag, it's just to serve as your guide, because I made the mistakes that you're going to run into and make, and I took advantage of the opportunities that you're going to run into and be able to take advantage of as well. And I want you to get it right. So without further ado, let's get into it. So my journey starts when I was 17 years old. I didn't really become conscious or spawn in until the age of 17. But I had a bit of a problem and a bit of a concern. When I was 17, I had this latent bundle of ambition and potential. I had this energy, I had this weird feeling that I wanted to do something great with my life, but I didn't know where to put it. I had all of this energy and all this pent up sort of, frustrated potential that I wanted to unleash and release, but I didn't know how. I didn't know what business to start. I didn't know what direction to go in. I didn't know what my goal was. I didn't have any information. All I knew is that I didn't want to go down the normal path. It was kind of an instance where I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew what I didn't want. And what I didn't want was what all of my friends wanted at the time. I could not relate to my peers in my social circle because they all wanted to go down the sort of conventional route, getting good grades, going to university, 9 to 5, getting a good job and having a good career, and then settling down in the suburbs and living happily ever after. To me, that was like my biggest fear, and I didn't resonate with this sort of desire, and it kind of terrified me. It really frightened me, to be honest. And so what I started to do when I was 17 is I started to blindly explore business. Now, when you're it's like 4 a.m. and you wake up in the night and you need to go for a piss, you need to go to the bathroom, and you have to try and make your way to the bathroom in the dark, and you're sort of stumbling around, like you're bleary-eyed, you don't know what's going on, but all you know is you need to piss. That's kind of what I was like at 17 years old. I had absolutely no idea what to look for, where I was going, what I needed to do. I was just blindly fumbling in the dark, desperately looking for the proverbial metaphorical toilet that was success, which is a weird way to put it, but we'll roll with it. And so at the age of 17, I started to explore business, and I knew I wanted to start a business, and I knew I wanted to become an entrepreneur, but I didn't know in what. And so between the ages of 17 and 18, I was at college, which is basically an advanced high school for you Americans, and I started telling everyone. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be successful and I'm gonna be this, millionaire dude, but no one really believed me. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna put on the screen right now a note that I wrote. And this was one of my close friends that told me, I overheard a conversation as I was walking away from a group of my friends. And the quote which always stuck with me was, he'll get bored of it after a while, he'll never make it. And I did, and I'm gonna tell you how. So, 17 years old, I'm in college. As I move into 18, I get ready to go to university, because whilst I want to be this successful entrepreneur, the conventional modern way of thinking, it did infect me a little bit. And so I went to university, and I went to study business at a university called Plymouth University in the UK. Needless to say, that lasted for about 6 months. I didn't feel comfortable at university. I didn't really feel like I fit in. Everyone was very heavily on this drinking, partying lifestyle, and I didn't really like it. I tried it and I pushed myself to try and like it, but I couldn't. I was way more content and happy reading books in the library and trying to build businesses than going out and drinking £10 Sainsbury's vodka. If any of you people from the UK have ever tried Sainsbury's own vodka, it tastes like paint stripper. So I go to uni, and I'm studying at university, and I'm sort of thinking okay, well, maybe I'll learn something here. But then a day came where, at the time, I was reading a book called What You See Is What You Get by Alan Sugar. And he says, sales is the most important thing to learn in business. And so I go to my university tutor, whose name I will not divulge, and I say to this guy, I say, when do we learn how to sell in this course? And he said, well, we don't really teach sales in this course. And this was an entrepreneurship and enterprise course at this university. And I said, what do you mean we don't learn how to sell? And he said, well, look, the problem is, Charlie, is the guys, the lecturers, the people who are lecturing and people who teach the course, they haven't actually run their own business, so we don't really teach sales because they haven't sold anything before. Which I must admit was not the best student retention strategy from the faculty. I kind of thought about that for like a day, and then I dropped out. The next day, I went back to my tutor. I said, look, this ain't for me, I'm dropping out. I did that before I told any of my parents or anything. Now, the problem I had is, at the time, I was so desperate to become successful that I burned myself out in a pretty bad way. I tried to start a dropshipping business, and what I'm gonna do is put on the screen now, I tried to start selling cat watches, the most hideous timepieces you could possibly comprehend. And so I built this Instagram page that you can see on the screen, and I found these designs on Alibaba. I thought I was Jeff Bezos. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get them from China, and I'm gonna sell them for like a 10x markup, and I'm gonna be a millionaire. Needless to say, that didn't work. It was my first ever failed business, and I learned a lot. I also tried to get into trading. And so I did all these Forex courses, and I bought all these people's signals and lost a bunch of money with trading, so that didn't last very long either. And also, whilst I was at university, I tried to start my first ever marketing agency, which was eventually the business model that I pursued to 6 and 7 figures before, to get to 8 figures. But the first 3 businesses I started failed. So I got the dropshipping store, didn't work. I had the trading thing, didn't work, and I had the marketing agency thing, didn't work. But I learned a lot from each business, especially the marketing agency. What I'm gonna do is put on the screen now the logo. I called this marketing agency Revenue, like you. I thought I'd really cooked with that one, and I went on Fiverr and I got the logo and I got the website together and I got the personal brand and all this stuff. Everything that didn't really matter, I put into this business. And this was whilst I was at university. So, here I am trying to start a dropshipping store, start a marketing agency, learning to trade. And then I was doing the course, and then I was also drinking £3 bottles of wine, and also trying to desperately find a girlfriend. There was lots of shit going on there. And so what happened is my university chapter or debacle came to this big burnout conclusion, where I ended up more lost than when I'd started, because now I thought, okay, well, business isn't gonna work out for me. The university route's not gonna be out for me. So, pardon mon français, I thought I was So I dropped out of uni. My parents were probably in a state of dismay, but they didn't show me, and I'm very grateful to them for that. It was very much an I told you so moment from my parents, because I was initially gonna do psychology. They didn't, credit to them, I love them, they didn't rub anything in my face. And so I now had to go back home, tail between my legs, to all of my old friends, all of my old peers, all of my old people in the village and everything, my family. And I felt like a complete disastrous failure, because I told everyone that I was gonna go and become this successful entrepreneur and build businesses and be a millionaire in the next 3 months, and I hadn't done it. In fact, I'd actually lost money. I was now in debt because I'd done, I'd done basically the term at university, and they charged me for the first year. Then I had my student loan expenses, and so I was $20,000, $30,000 in debt at this point. So going to uni I was worse off than when I'd started. But I'd learned something very, 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 very important. I'd learned the power of, distraction. I'd learned that the most important thing is focus, because what I've tried to do is basically spread my energy and my time in 5 or 6 different directions, with the course, with the businesses, with the dating and the partying. And I was trying things out, and I was finding what didn't work. And so I came back, and at this point in my life, I was in a real state of I wouldn't call it depression, because I think that's a pretty strong word to use, but my mental health was not in a good shape. I was incredibly burned out and incredibly anxious and depressed. And the history of my existence in my life has always been such that if I don't have a goal that I'm working towards, or I don't feel like I'm making meaningful progress along a trajectory towards an outcome, I get very anxious. And I always find that a goal is a good remedy for anxiety. And so I come back, and immediately I throw myself into 3 different jobs. And so, I start working for Clark's Customer Care. In fact, I'll put a video on the screen now of me taking a call at Clark's.
Oh, see, the 9E is still out of stock in that one, so is a 9D going to be okay?
But Clark's is a shoe brand in the UK, and their headquarters were near where I grew up. And so I was a call center support rep, making £8 an hour or $10 an hour. I also worked in a golf club, a place called Mendip Golf Club. I was just doing waiting and like, you know, helping out with the kitchen and stuff. And then I also worked in a local pub as well. So I had 3 jobs and they were all paying like, you know, $10 an hour or whatever. I had this problem where I felt the need to sort of compensate for my failure. And so what I did is I think I probably did like 90 to 100 hours a week with all these jobs combined. So what I do is I do the call center stuff, and then I'd go and I'd work in the pub, and then when I couldn't get shifts in the pub, I'd work in the golf course, and I worked like 7 days a week, like non-stop. I really did myself some damage. This is sort of the next lesson I learned, is that your body has a real limit, and there's only so much stress and cortisol and work you can take before you send yourself to the darkness. And I did, and I sent myself to this point of burnout where I like kind of disassociated from reality. Like I actually developed like some disorders. I had panic attacks. I couldn't sleep. I was in a constant state of brain fog. Needless to say, the beginning of my journey didn't start off very well. It wasn't this straight, easy line to 6 figures and 10K a month. It was full of confused desperation and, like I said, fumbling around in the dark, looking for a place to piss. You know, it was not good, and I did not have a good time. But fortunately enough for me, my mother, God bless her, had the wisdom to sort of sit me down and point me in a direction. And that's kind of I think the job of a parent when they have a lost son or a confused son, is basically just point them in a direction. And so what my mum did is she sat me down and she got me applying for jobs that actually had a future. And so I applied for an apprenticeship in marketing and sales. And this was really where my life started to change, and I actually started to make some tangible, meaningful progress. So at this point, I'm still 18, 19 years old, and I start this apprenticeship. Now, the apprenticeship kind of felt like a step backwards for me because, you know, due to my compensatory work ethic, because I was compensating for being such a failure, I was making good money working 100 hours a week. I was making like $10 an hour. I was working like 90, 100 hours a week. So I was making like, you know, 3, 4K a month with these minimum wage jobs through just pure sheer desperate will, right, to prove myself, which is what it was. I was insecure. I started this apprenticeship, and it was a huge sort of, you know, step back for me because of the income. So the apprenticeship wage in the UK is like $4 an hour, or was at the time of me doing it. And so I apply for this apprenticeship, and I get an interview. And I hop in my Vauxhall Corsa 2008 weapon. I show up for this interview and I have a conversation with the boss. One thing I remember from this interview, in fact one of the only things I remember from this interview, is explaining sort of my story and just divulging what had happened in the last year or two. And my boss was kind of empathetic. He said, "Have you got any questions for me?" And I was like, "Aha, I'm gonna be smart." And I asked him, I said, "How will you know you've made the right decision to hire me in a year?" And he said, "It's very simple, you'll still be here," because it was a sales role. And so this apprenticeship was a marketing and sales apprenticeship, which means that I was going to be learning social media marketing, but more importantly, learning sales. And, you know, I got the job, and it's a bloody good job I did, because if I didn't, then right now I'd probably be doing, well, God knows what. I really do not know what would have happened to me if I didn't get that job. I remember it now, my start date was in a month, and so before the apprenticeship starts, I messaged my boss and I say, "Thank you for the opportunity, contract signed, blah, blah, blah." I said, "What can I do to prepare for this role?" And he said, "Just learn everything you can about sales." And so what I did for the entire month is I think I read probably like 12, maybe even 15 books on sales and cold calling. And so I turned up for the job on the first day, and he was like, "Oh, what did you study?" And I was like, I brought up all the books, and I just absorbed a lot of reading. And this is a theme I wanted to touch on in this sort of these early years between 17 and 19, between 17 and 20, is the only thing that I got right during this period of wild chaos and stress was reading. So between the ages of 17 and 20, I think I read about probably 180 books. So it was a 3-year period, and I averaged more than a book a week, so just like a book and a bit a week. And I know because I actually kept a log. In fact, I'll put a picture on the screen now of some of my books that I used to have at my family home. You know, I had some at university, I had some at home, I had some under the bed. I had too many books that I didn't have enough room for bookshelves in my bedroom to keep them, so you can see them on the screen here. I think that was a year's worth of reading. I think I took that picture when it was like New Year, and I was like, how many books have I read this year? And it was I put it on my Instagram, and I didn't get any girls because of it, as you can probably imagine. But you know, the one thing that I nailed from 17 to 20, the one habit that I kept consistent was reading. And so what this meant is that when I stepped into this apprenticeship. And when I stepped into my first business during this apprenticeship, which I'll explain in a second, I had a pretty large wealth of knowledge for a teenager. Not only that, but I also knew how to focus. Because reading teaches you two things. First of all, it teaches you the stuff that you're actually reading. But second of all, it teaches you how to sustain focus on something that could be considered quite boring and unstimulating. And so I had this uncanny skill and ability at the age of 19 and 20 to focus. I knew how to think as well, because reading, it teaches you lots of things. First of all, it teaches you how to focus, it teaches you knowledge, but it teaches you how to articulate yourself. When I make these videos and I sit down to talk for a long time, and I have I can by some miracle maintain coherent thought for an hour or two and articulate myself with a vocabulary that could be considered wide, it's purely because I read. And so I'm not joking, I read over a book a week for 3 years straight during this time. And I have Tai Lopez to thank for that. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Tai Lopez, he was one of those internet marketers, and he was very bullish on reading. And so I read, all the money I made I spent on books. I read everything I could get my hands on. I read everything from biographies to science and biology to psychology, I read a lot of psychology. I read tons of business books. I read books on like accounting for dummies. Like I just absorbed as many books as possible during this time. Some very good, some very bad. I read Stoic philosophy, books about what's going to happen in the future. I read history books. I read business books. You name it. Whatever I could get my hands on, I would just absorb. I even taught myself to speed read, which is a skill that has sort of waned as I've grown, because now I prefer to read for leisure more than just robotically scanning. But that's how seriously I took that, and it's the one thing I got right. Take with that what you will. One lesson that I learned from my teenage years is that where you go in the future is built on a foundation, and that foundation is the information that is cognitively available in your mind. Because if you want to know what to do and what the right decision is, it helps to have a wealth of knowledge to draw on. Yeah, I got kind of lucky there, because I didn't really realize what I was doing, and now I live the second order consequences of that, diligence. And so anyway, so I get to this apprenticeship, and I remember I at this point in my life, I'm still incredibly burned out. I've had this sort of 6 months of university, I've had this 6 months of these 3 jobs, and I wasn't taking care of myself, I was anxious, I was all a complete mess, completely all over the place. And this apprenticeship sort of focused me. But I remember when I first got the job and I sat down with my boss and my manager, God bless them, because they were amazing to me. And I sat down and I told them, I said, look, I'm going to work my absolute arse off for this job. I'm going to make you so much money. I'm going to make you so proud. You're not going to regret this. But one thing I need you to know is I'm ill. I'm not well. My mental health at this point was completely shot. I was still having panic attacks. I was still having anxiety attacks. I would still sometimes I'd be talking to someone, but then suddenly I was I'd get this weird feeling that they weren't real, or they weren't there. I later found out this is called disassociation. And so basically I was paying off what I could now call the burnout debt. So when you work extensively hard for a very long period of time, which I did purely to just sort of prove to myself that I was worth something, and it's always been a psychological point of contention for me is I feel like if I'm not destroying myself with work, then I'm not worth anything, and we can get into that another day for sure. So I sit my bosses down, and at this point, the only way I can describe my mental state is just pure terror, and I'm terrified that, because of this, I'm gonna fuck up the job and I'm not gonna do well. But basically what happened after 3 months of the apprenticeship, I got better. I think what it was is I don't know if it was burning myself out and overworking myself that sent me to the psychological darkness, so to speak, or if it was just more the aimlessness. I think it was probably more that. I think the anxiety that I was getting and this sort of, pure terror and confusion was coming from not knowing where I was going. And I've always thought about this, if you don't know where you're going, you're always going to be lost. Imagine just setting sail from sea, with a ship, and you don't have a destination. You're going to end up somewhere that you don't want to be. And unconsciously I knew that, and it really stressed me out. Once I got on track and I saw that this apprenticeship was a good vehicle for me to learn about business and marketing and sales and develop skills, my sort of mind calmed. Like things became very calm after like a month or two of being in this apprenticeship, which is indicative of that problem being aimlessness. The apprenticeship was very brutal. I thought I was going to be learning Facebook ads and website builds, which I kind of was, but the main core role of the job was basically to just make cold calls. And so I would make, I think probably for the job, 150 to 200 cold calls a day. So I started at 9:30, I'd sit down, pick up the phone, call till 1 p.m, have lunch, come back, call till 4:30 p.m. And then the cool thing about an apprenticeship in the UK, whilst you get paid $4 an hour a day has to be dedicated to something called on-the-job training. The on-the-job training is designed to help you complete your coursework for the apprenticeship. So whilst you're learning like stuff on the job and you're actually like, doing the work, what you also have to do is complete a whole bunch of coursework and like exams and stuff along the side. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'll put a picture of my student card on the screen here, and you can see my TikTok haircut, which is absolutely blasphemous and terrible. This was me, and this is what I looked like at this time. You can see, like, when they took that picture of me, I was like, it was like I'd been on the Western Front for 3 years in World War I. Like, I was in a bad way, trust me. So I do this on-the-job training, and basically, I start developing a bit of a scheme and a bit of a plan. And this is something that I've had mixed emotions about for since I did this, because I became a little bit Machiavellian, and I'm not proud to admit this, but I'm also happy I did it, where whilst I was doing this apprenticeship, I started to plan for the future, and I wanted to have my own business. I knew that this on-the-job training, this hour a day that I had during the workday, was an opportunity to learn how to build my own company. In fact, I'll play a video for you right now on my last day of my apprenticeship. All right, guys, so today is the last day of my 9-to-5 job, or apprenticeship, I should say. It wasn't really a job or internship, however you want to call it. It's the last day. I've been here for about 14 months now, 13, 14 months, just over a year. I'm gonna look back at this and I'm gonna think, you should be glad that you did that. How exciting. Yeah, let's go. You can see that, like, I was pretty over the moon to be finished with this thing. I can actually show you my desk from my apprenticeship, and you can see what I've got on the home screen there of that picture is a mansion. It's like a big house in Los Angeles. It's called 1520 Gilchrist Drive. And I'd look at that house every day because I always wanted to live in a big villa by the beach, which is kind of now where I live, which is actually a little bit terrifying. So I was at the point where I was trying to like build my own thing. And I did. And so what I did is I knew I got to get this on-the-job training out of the way. This last hour of the day I should be using for something more productive than just doing coursework. So I did 18 months of coursework in 3 months. The guy who works in the college who helped me through this, his name was Jonathan. He was incredible. He was very supportive. He would give me the coursework, and I was just getting it done, like, drilling it out. And I got it done. I got 18 months of coursework done in 3 months. So what this now did is it cleared my mind, because now all I had was a job. I had a 9-to-5. I didn't have to think about the coursework. I submitted it all. I couldn't get the certificate until 12 months and 1 day, which is when I got the certificate. So I finished it 6 months early. And now I had an opportunity. I was like, I've got this hour a day that is mandated by the college for me to do on-the-job training. And so what I would do with my day is I started to watch courses on how to become successful and how to build a business. I would do that. I'd watch the course in 2 times speed on the last hour of the day. And this gave me the direction I needed to start my first business, my first proper business that actually worked without a cringy logo or a cringy watch design. And I started a marketing agency called CM Digital. And so CM Digital was my first ever business. And what this basically was me being a glorified freelancer. It was basically like me wanting to do marketing for people. And I picked the niche of gyms. And so what I would do, and I did this for the rest of my apprenticeship, so the remaining 9 months of my apprenticeship, or no, it was actually like a good 11 months, because I finished, I think, the apprenticeship after like 13, 14 months, because I put off the conversation of leaving. This was my routine, and this was really what made me successful. This was the cause and effect that set me off on the trajectory to 6, 7, 8 figures. I'd wake up at 5:30 a.m, I would go to the gym, I'd be back home, showered and have breakfast, and then I would leave the house at typically about 7 to 7:15 a.m. It was a 30-minute drive to my apprenticeship, and for some reason, on the way to my apprenticeship, I would listen to Power Glide by Ray Sremmerd on repeat. Don't ask me why. Sometimes I'd listen to the course in the car that I was doing. Anyway, besides the point, I'd arrive at my job at typically about 7:45 or 7:30 a.m. And this gave me 2 hours before 9:30 before my job started. So what I would do is I'd sit in my Corsa in my car, pull up my hotspot, pull up a lead list, and I would make cold calls for my own business. And so because I was working in the gym niche and I was doing marketing for gyms, I knew that most gyms, gym owners were on site in the morning. This is one of their busiest times in the morning. I'd make cold calls. Then I'd start my job, 9:30 a.m. to 1 p.m, cold calls for my job. Then I'd go on my lunch. And on my lunch, I'd eat as quick as I could, 1 to 2 p.m. I basically would drive to a lay-by, which was about 5 minutes from my work. And I'm gonna put a clip in, I'm gonna put a video in now of me showing you this lay-by to show that it was a real place. So this is literally like, I'm pulling up to this little lay-by, I pull in, and this is literally where I sit for about an hour. Monday through Friday, on my lunch break, I've already eaten, and I just make cold calls from this spot, and I've got this really nice sign. And what I'd do is I'd sit in this lay-by with my laptop. During this hour on my lunch break, in this lay-by, after I'd eaten a meal deal from Tesco, big up, I'd make more calls, more cold calls. I'd either do meetings, I'd like try and book sales calls, or I'd do sales calls, or I would just work on my company. Then I'd go back to my apprenticeship, 2 p.m. to 4:30 p.m, cold calls for the marketing agency I was working for. And then between 4:30 p.m. and 5:30 p.m, that's when I would start doing this course, and the course to start a business. I'd drive home, get home by 6 p.m, eat as much food as I could, cold calls until about 8:30 to 9 p.m. Then I'd quick scope on Call of Duty World War II for about an hour and then go to bed. And that was what I did for about 9 months straight. What that did is it got me my first client, my second client, my third client, my fourth client, my fifth client. And by the end of my apprenticeship, I was making about $5,000 a month. In fact, let me play the clip of me getting my second client. Unfortunately, I don't have the video clip of me getting my first, but here's me in my Corsa, having just finished a sales call and signed my second client. Oh, boys. Client number 2, on board, ready to go, getting agreement set up, getting payment set up. Yes! Why am I more excited for this second one than the first one? I just called him and he's confirmed he wants to go ahead. It was between me and another company. He's really happy with my approach. So I've got another client. Oh, another £1,000 a month. Awesome gym, awesome owner, awesome guy. Get in, you. Yes! And I'm just finishing off the campaign for this other fitness gym. The first client I've got, so it's perfect timing. But that's another £1,000 a month. There's a couple of things that I had to drop for him. So like the first month he's gonna make payments in 4 installments, just because he wants to get to know the work I'm doing. It's cool, but yes, mate. Oh, I'm so f***ing pleased. This day was going so well as well. Look how f***ing beautiful and I'm setting up some on ClickFunnels, some pixels for this client. Another client back. Get in. And so that was a pretty unique time. I worked my way out of hell. By the end of my apprenticeship, I was financially stable enough where I was actually making like 3 times more through my clients than I was at this apprenticeship. And so that demonstrated possibility to me. So once I finished my apprenticeship and I had the conversation with my boss, which came as a bit of a shock to them, and I understand that. I still sometimes feel guilty about going off on my own when they'd given me so much. The boss that I had, my apprentice boss, his name was Alan. Thank you, Alan. I doubt you're watching this, but my goodness me, did you change my life. So thank you so much, and I'm sorry that I had a Machiavellian streak enough to build my own thing whilst working for you, but I think I made you enough money to make up for it, I hope. So Alan, if you're watching this, thank you, man. Goodness me, the conversations that I had with that man changed my life. He really helped me out, and I'm gonna get a bit emotional talking about that, so let's move on. I'm now 20 years old at this point. I'm making like 50K a year. So I'm kind of 9 months into the business, but I haven't really started the business because all I've been doing is working part-time on the business. And so I count my start date with my business when I finish my apprenticeship, because that's when I go from apprentice to business owner. And so I have this sort of chain of identities that I go down to make this money. I start off as, insecure college kid, then student, then dropout, then lost, degenerate minimum wage worker, then apprentice, and then glorified freelancer, then business owner. So I kind of get to this stage where I'm like, okay, I'm making a good enough money and I'm going to start this business properly, although I kind of already am running this company. I've got clients, I've got marketing clients, it's going well. First move I make is I find an office, because I learned that trying to work from home full time whilst my little brother wants me to play on the trampoline with him and I'm driving my mum insane, I need an office. And so I'm going to put a picture on the screen here of my first ever proper office. No one took that picture. I put my phone on a timer because one day I knew I'd need it for a video like this. This is where I spent the next year fully dialed in on the company. Within like 6 months of doing that, I think I got to 10K a month, and I know I did because I can actually show you a clip of me telling you I did it. So, okay, agency's been going for 7 months, and this month, July, 7 months in, it's officially my first £10,000 month, which equates to be about $12,300. So in 7 months, I've taken a business that I knew nothing about, knew very little about sales, knew very little about delivery. I've taken a business from zero to £10,000 a month in monthly recurring revenue, which is insane. And, I signed I think 8 or 9 marketing agency clients at £1,000 a month, and I got a 10K a month. But then what started to happen is I broke it all down. I went interrailing with my sister for 3 months, and we traveled all of Europe, and I thought that I was this hotshot entrepreneur. I was full of ego, and I basically kind of destroyed my business over this 3-month period. Because I was like, I'm gonna do this laptop lifestyle thing, I'm gonna become this digital nomad dude, and I'm gonna be in Italy, and then I'm gonna be in Thailand, and then I'm gonna be in Croatia, and I did that, and it didn't work. And I failed very miserably. And when I came back from that trip, I'd lost 80% of my clients. They'd been dropping like flies as I was going around, but I was so full of myself, and I was so overconfident that I lost them all. When I got back from the traveling, I kind of learned that taking a 3-month holiday when you have a company is not an option, and slowly I rebuilt it up. Now this is where, around the time that I met my business partner, Bo. We'd met online, and Bo had a marketing agency as well in the same niche, and he had a gym marketing agency, and so did I. The thing is I sucked at getting results for my clients, because this is the thing, is I'd had this sales background of being a year in sales, so I knew how to get clients. I knew how to make cold calls, I knew how to close clients. My skill set was in acquisition and communication. What I really was not very good at was getting my clients results. And so the problem that Bo had is he was struggling with sales, and the problem I had is I was struggling with service delivery. After a little bit of back and forward of me doing sales calls for him and him doing service delivery for me, we kind of partnered and we merged, and we built a company called NorthFlow Consulting, which if you want to Google, you can go and check out, because it was a real company. And we got this to about 100K a month. That was when I basically became a millionaire. At this point, I think I was 21, became a millionaire at about 21. So I'd kind of gone on this pretty fast trajectory, and it was awesome. I was working with, this dude, and we got along really well. The funny thing is we worked together for 5 years before we met. And I'll tell you the story of, where we went with the businesses in a second here. But for some reason, this partnership just worked. We'd never met. I think I saw him on a video call twice. Once was because we had a Facebook ad account shut down, and so we had to hop on a video call with a notary, lawyer, and Bo's camera was always off, but he had to turn it on because the lawyer had to see that he was a real person. That was the first time I actually saw him. I'd seen pictures of him, but a video. We've been working together for 8 months before then, but we got along really well. And so we built NorthFlow Consulting. We got to about 100K a month with a done-for-you model. I think we had 64 done-for-you clients at our peak. Then things got a bit weird because, during this time, having 64 clients and making 100K a month sounds great, but you've really got 64 headaches. And so, it was bad. At that point in the business was incredibly stressful. We had an overbloated team, profit margins were nowhere near what they should have been, and we'd kind of scaled real fast without actually having any proper operational infrastructure, and so the business kind of fell apart. And then what happened is we transitioned to a sort of more course-based info model, which worked, and we sort of sustained 100K a month and basically doubled our profit margins by doing that. But then, drum roll please, COVID hits. And every single client that we've signed in the last 6 months suddenly asked for their money back because they're gyms and they've been shut down by the US government. We work with the US, mainly with US clients. So COVID comes along and kind of, puts a little bit of a spanner in my entrepreneurial works, which is kind of stressful. And I didn't take this very well, and neither did Bo. We kind of entered this sort of pretty big rut. And what happened during this time is all of the old bad behaviors and habits and identities that I used to have came back into fruition. They came back to play. And this is something that I've learned that is incredibly important that you understand, is that you're going to change, and you're going to develop, and you're going to grow, and you're going to become a different person. But that old version of you is latent, and it's sitting there, and you're in a constant battle to not let it come back up and manifest. And so, when COVID hits and we lost all of our clients and the business had basically just sort of failed, we didn't know what to do. We tried, but suddenly before I knew it, I was staying up till 4 a.m, drinking, playing Call of Duty, eating food, and not even working. And I did that for a good couple of months, and I think Bo did as well. And after about 2-3 months of that, we kind of realized that, okay, well, we should probably get back on the horse here. And so we didn't really know what to do. We didn't really have any idea where to go from here, because we'd gone from being these super successful. I was Bo's 3 years younger than me. Yeah, so I was like 22 and Bo was 19. Like we were making like ridiculous money. Like between us each, we were each making like 50K a month. We were each making like multi-six figures a year in personal income and profit. Like it was mental. But we'd gone from, you know, literally 100 to 0 in like a month. Like the second the US shutdowns came down, the whole business had failed. Anyway, after this sort of, you know, 2 month of childish, whatever the hell I did and whatever the hell Bo did, we put our heads together and we thought, right, let's start another business. And this is when we started Imperium Agency, which was basically, the intention was to start a done-for-you business for the acquisition of marketing agencies. Because there's one thing that we knew how to do really well, and that was get clients. You know, we were incredibly good at cold email, cold messaging, cold calling, ads, sales, and the whole acquisition funnel for our business was what we really mastered. I start reaching out to marketing agencies and I start sending them emails and DMs and cold calls saying, look, like I've built a 7-figure agency, here you go. The funny thing is during this point, as the COVID shutdown started to sort of, you know, come up, we continued to run NorthFlow Consulting. So we turned the ads back on, I continued doing sales calls, we sent the cold email campaigns out, lots of old clients came back, and we also kept a couple of our retainer clients. We had some big retainer clients that we'd paused. And so once the shutdowns sort of, you know, loosened, clients started coming back and the machine started ticking back up. And we did manage to get NorthFlow Consulting back to the point where it was at 7 figures. But the thing is that didn't happen for like the first couple of months of Imperium. And so we had this weird stage where we had two businesses. We had Imperium Agency and we had NorthFlow Consulting. NorthFlow Consulting, once the COVID shutdowns were sort of unleashed, was doing about 100K a month. And Imperium Agency was doing probably about 50, 60K a month. And we had to make this decision, this sort of fork in the road. We were like, which business do we want to run? Because I knew from my 18-year-old fumbling in the dark desperation that running multiple businesses and trying to run multiple businesses is not a good strategy for success. It's about focus. It's a huge important lesson. It's about focus, doing one thing. We decided with Imperium, we were like, okay, well, we feel more passionate about this. We have been this market. And so it was a bloody good decision. So we actually we didn't sell NorthFlow Consulting in the way that I'd love for you to believe. We were approached by a competitor and we were fortunate enough to have our clients, our done-for-you clients acquired. Not for anywhere near as much as you might think. This was not some grand exit. This wasn't some massive deal. Well, it might be by some people's standards, but by our standards at the time it wasn't. But we just wanted to get rid of these clients and make sure that they were taken care of. And so NDA signed, everything, blah, blah, blah. Clients are sent off to this other person. We wrap up the coaching, the course thing, and we go all in on Imperium. And that was, 3 years ago now. So I would have been, 2022 was when we did that, when I was 22 years old. And at this point I start YouTube. So you can scroll down through my YouTube channel and you'll see me making videos about marketing agency stuff and how to become successful in the agency space. And the second we drop NorthFlow Consulting, we go from like 50K a month to like 200K a month real quick. At this point, I moved to a city called Bristol in the UK because I was still living with my parents for a while. And then I moved out with NorthFlow Consulting and then I moved to a city called Bath when I was doing 200K a month. So the business starts growing and we start learning a lot about building teams, about building team culture. We get very, very good at the acquisition thing. The one thing that we'd really nailed as well was the product. Because the beauty of the company that we were running and that we still kind of run to this day is that our acquisition is what we teach. And so the better we get at acquiring clients, the better we get at teaching people how to get clients. And so we had this sort of product flywheel that was going. There's lots of people in this info marketing, internet money space. And the people that really make the real money are the people that teach people how to do what they do. And that's just me being honest with you. When you see dropshippers selling courses on how to do dropshipping, that's because it's more profitable and it's easier to make money teaching people how to dropship than it is to actually dropship yourself. So that happens, and we start building, we start growing, and we have version 1 of our product, which gets incredible results. And it's the one thing that I'm proud of in my entrepreneurial career with Imperium Agency is we have always been able to get good results. We've always put clients first. There's a lot of people in this market that don't do that, so that's something we do really well. And from then on, we just basically worked on the company. And Bo and I worked, really since, it was 4 years ago now. So we went from 0 to 50K a month real quick, then to 200K a month. And now we're at the point where we're making about $1 million a month. And I've got no doubt that by this time next year, we'll probably be doing 2 million a month, maybe more. And you know, my life has changed. And I know there's obviously gonna be more detail and nuance to the story than that, but that's how I remember it. And what I'm gonna do now is put on the screen a picture of my bank account in 2017. That was the level of broke that I was. And bear in mind, I had like student debts and stuff. I was like 20, 30K in debt at this time. You know, now, if I make anything less than $800,000 in 1 month, I'm on the edge of my chair beside myself with fear, which is interesting. It's interesting how quickly you can change. And the one thing that I want you to take away from this video, if you're still watching, I commend you for your focus and attention. But the one thing I want you to take away from this video is that it's actually possible. Like, it actually can be done. I'm not a miracle child. I'm not some genius or some smart dude where the stars aligned. I was exactly where you are. I was insecure, anxious, I had no idea what to work on, but the one thing that saved me, well, there was two things that saved me. It was knowledge and it was work, and knowledge of what to work on. You know, when I think back, I had no business becoming successful. But the one thing that I had and that I held on to was a sense of direction, a sense of purpose, and knowing what I want, and a work ethic. If you know what you want, and you know what your goal is, and you know where you're headed, which is kind of what really my apprenticeship represented, and you can work, then you can pretty much work your way out of any bad situation. Hard work is not going to get you there. You have to know where you're going and what you want to do, because otherwise you're just working into a wall. But it's possible that you can go from having £82 and 17 pence to multi-8 figures in under a decade. It's not easy, and I'd like to warn you that like, this story, it seems all fun and games for me to sit here and just, you know, rattle it off and tell you and make you feel all motivated and good, but I went through the 7 planes of suffering. Like, let me tell you something, like, and it always will suck. You know, business and money and making money and becoming successful is just, it's just one big road of pain. And it wasn't enjoyable at all. It was horrible. There were nights that I had crippling doubt, panic attacks, anxiety, clients leaving, thinking everything was gonna fail, like constantly being, like, just burnout, terror. It was horrible. It was a horrible, horrible, horrible experience. But let me tell you that if you're willing to go through it, it will be worth it. And it's possible, and you can do it. And I think a lot of people, when they're young, you know, and I'm still young by contrast standards, but, you know, when you're in your late teens or early 20s, a lot of people are conditioned by society and by themselves and the narratives that we tell ourselves that it's not possible, but it is. Like, you can do it. You just have to work, and you have to be willing to suffer, like, real bad. So yeah, that's the story. Still only just getting started. I'm sure I'll be able to retell this in 10 years with some new levels of depth, but I hope you found it useful. And if you enjoyed it, then you can subscribe, and I'll keep giving you more information about how I did it. Take care. Bye.